The year is 2948. The Kaisan Empire is withdrawing from Decopolis and leaving us to fend for ourselves against 6, or is it 7, barbarian empires. Let's take a look at the map of the Decapolitans. Here we go, we drew this. Isn't that great? We got 10 cities here. Scythopolis, Hippos, that's our capital. Gadara, Rafana, Dion, Damascus, Kanatha, Philadelphia, Gerasa, and Pella. Those names sound familiar. We have some barbarians. We've got the Grey Horde. We've got the Mecca. We've got the Popular Front, the Wheelian Supremacy, the Puca, the Tilian Republic. And remember these two. So the Popular Front is a bunch of imperial malcontents and ne'er-do-wells who are trying to establish their own resistance front down here. But interestingly enough, the malcontents and ne'er-do-wells have ne'er-do-wells of their own. In fact, they have a mercenary company that showed up in 2948. The Puca were going to show up in 2948 to raid us, but sadly, their leader had information that would have led to the arrest of Hillary Clinton, and he died, which meant that year there was too big of a mad scramble for the new leadership position, so the Puca stayed home. The Wheelian Supremacy, realizing that the Imperial Navy was gone and no longer protected our little frontier nation, our burgeoning empire of our own, they sent a little probing force to find out how tough we were without the backing of the Imperials. Now, we do have a few Imperials left. Not everybody has left. The Navy is gone, but we still have pretty good trade relations, if memory serves, and this is where notes come in handy. This is a really complicated solo campaign written by Jim Webster. See, there's his name right down there. So when you play through this, you really want to take good notes because there's a lot going on. There's a lot of variables involved with this. As I said, in 2948, we had 3 raiding parties. The Popular Front, they only sent one company. That's why I said, these guys are probably, this raiding company, probably mercenaries, because if you look at the political situation for the Popular Front, it's provided right here in the rule book. Now, there are a total of 10, so you can have a different campaign every time you play this game. 10 barbarian forces, and so there's the Fustian host, nomad people who traverse the plains. We're not going to run into them. The Makan, those guys we will. But we are not interested in them. We're interested in the Popular Front, which is a revolutionary organization whose membership is drawn from those who escaped the Empire. That's the Kaisan Empire. We were loyalists who unfortunately have been abandoned by the core worlds, if you will, right? So those who fled for refuge in the Bakatan Empire. Again, the Bakatan Empire is kind of a rival empire, and they have, for whatever reason, I don't have Bakatans in here. They're somewhere else on this planet. I guess this planet is a border between 2 empires, the Kaisan and the Bakatan. And that's fortunate for us, because the Bakatan would be fighting us on even footing, even if we had Imperial backing, which we don't. Instead, I wanted to look at, so the Popular Front. These guys showed up. The Popular Front seems to have built a tribe around them as exiles from various people joined them. They have formed their own brigade. So if these guys really decide to take it to us, they can put the hurt on us. But this time around, just the one company. I say, hey guys, instead of coming here and raiding all of my outlying posts, remember, every map is an abstraction. This map is no exception. For this map, Gerasa is one of the largest cities with a population of 13. I think it is the largest. Yeah. But it's not just this little point on a map. 1 inch equals 30 miles. What does 1 inch look like? Let me give you guys some scale here. 30 miles. So the entirety of Gerasa is probably a half an inch out. That's where the suburbs lie. And then you can even get to the point that, another 30 miles away, there's outlying towns here. This is all going to be, sorry for the bump. This is all going to be, all the yellowish areas that you see here, those are going to be, I guess you could call them agricultural lands, right? In our last episode, we had a little fight. The Wheelian Supremacy sent that probing force, and the random number generator that we used said that the battle took place in a mountain valley. Now, the Wheelians have this nice big gap, and we probably have some pretty solid defenses down here, so they decided to kind of slip around this way. I am, by the way, rationalizing. This is a post-action rationalization. I didn't have to worry about this while we were fighting, but when the fighting was over, and that's a lot of what we're going to do today, So, well, wait a minute. If it was in a mountain pass, does that mean they tried to like come through up here? I thought, well, we'll put them up in the high hills here. Some kind of maybe basin and range. Maybe there's a pass through the hills through here. That's where the battle took place. Little mountain villages, probably some mining up here in these wooded hills. We completely pantsed them. We beat the ever-loving snot out of them. Their little probing force doesn't know what hit them. We hit them with everything we had and drove them back to the Wheelian supremacy. Now, that does a couple of interesting things with respect to the campaign, because the first thing to be aware of is that when you completely demolish an invading force, and I should say there's discretion must apply, right? Work out what the raiders plan to do. So here we go. I want to quote chapter and verse here for you. A barbarian people who were defeated last year will not get involved in incidents this year. Barbarian people who were severely defeated, took 50% casualties, will not get involved in incidents for D6 years. That means we are safe from these bad boys for D6 years. Let's go ahead and roll that D6 right now and find out how much time we have available. So I rolled a 2. So for 2 years, I don't have to worry about the Wheelians. What does that mean? Jim doesn't tell us. But he does tell us that every year, because the Imperial Navy is gone, 1d6 of these nations are going to attack us. So what I'm going to do, and now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to treat this, and I'm going to put a 1. Let's just go ahead and give these guys some numbers. So every time raiders come, 3, 4, 5, and 6 for the Grey Horde, which I feel like I already did that. 3, oh, I did. Well, I circle it now so it's harder to miss. So if I roll this year and I have 6 guys coming at me, then anytime, or whatever it is, right? I have guys. If I roll a 3, it's a get out of jail free card for this year and next. The Wheelians will not attack in 24, 29, 49, or 29, 50. Just as with the death of the head of state, I don't have to worry about these guys. And that's really fundamental, because if I have to fight off 4, 5, 6 barbarian hordes every year, I'm not going to last very long. They're going to carve me up. And as our good friends over at the Armchair Dragoons like to point out, most solo games are carefully constructed. They're carefully balanced to make you feel much like modern-day Dungeons & Dragons. They're calibrated to make you feel like you're going to lose until at the end you actually win. Challenging without being overwhelming is what we're looking for. And so if things are going way too easy, I'm going to dial things up. In fact, I might say, hey, you know what? If I have, in our last episode, I said, listen, if I have, let's roll the D6. I got D6 barbarians. Okay, 1 is terrible. I got 4. Maybe what I should do is roll 4 dice and accept the doubles. Look, I got 2 5s. Maybe the Tillian Republic is sending 2 forces in to get me. Instead of re-rolling this one and having guys come at me from 3 different directions, I can just honor the doubles and say, well, I'm just going to have to roll twice to see what these Tillian Republican forces are going to do. That's a thing that you can do. But we're not doing that right now. We still haven't fully resolved the aftermath of the last episode. And just by way of a thought exercise here, one of the things that we're doing is we're kind of retconning what happened. We fought the battle, and then we thought about what's going on, and now it's time, and with a little bit more time, I was able to sit down, look at the situation, rewrite. This is my military force that you're looking at right here, but I was able to kind of rewrite history and find out exactly what happened in the aftermath of that battle. Look at it, like adjust the resolution so I can look at it in a little more fine detail, and that's what I want to talk to you about today. Maybe we'll play out the beginning of year 2949 as well, but for now, let's just take a look at the ramifications. And we should probably also talk about what these casualties meant. The system that we used to resolve this battle offered up 8 infantry casualties. The enemy took a lot more casualties than we did. I think they took like 75% casualties, which is why I rolled the D6. I got 2 years off. Or at least 2 years reprieve from the Wheelians coming at me. Now, for the 8 casualties that I received, we've divvied that up evenly. I had 4 companies of infantry. I had 1 tank that was damaged. And the way I've decided to handle this is to take a look at the way Hellfire organizes companies. And basically, within the Hellfire campaign's rules, I should probably point out that these rules are predicated upon the use of Hellfire, Jim's generic 1-300 SF Wargames rules, which it's not entirely clear how these companies are formed. It's 1-300, so as you might expect, they are built upon the idea of bases. And if we take a look at the scenarios in the back, what you'll find is that, let's take a look here at a local dispute. So here we have the reinforcements. Let's see, the clansmen in towns, where is it? 6 bases, here we go. The townsmen have a group of 6 bases. Okay, great. This attacking force, the mercenary company, 1 group of 6 bases with flak and energy weapons. All right, but nowhere in this book does Jim tell you how to procure forces. He doesn't give you orders of battle. He says, here's some scenarios, and if you want to write your own, LOL, good luck, figure it out your dang self. I am fortunate in that I have Hellfire campaigns as well, which does give you definitive costs. Now, there are costs in Hellfire and the Fall of Empire. When you recruit forces of your own, he gives you costs both annually and for calling them up, basically. But aside from the difference between the fact that when you call up a local militia, so each town has a home defense and an expeditionary force that can go out and assist the other cities. And he tells us that those are 9 bases plus an HQ base. The HQ base has some anti-armor, I guess you could call it, capabilities, man-portable missiles, that sort of thing. Okay, that's all I need to know. 10 bases. We'll get to this in a second. I'm going to leave right here. So with 10 bases and 2 casualties, I'm going to consider that 1 base of casualties. It doesn't really matter all that much at this point because right now, my main reactionary force, and again, just to remind you, my reactionary force is composed of the remnants. What I mean is the remains of the Imperial forces that are on planet, and then my own mechanized infantry battalion. I have 3 companies of mechanized infantry, so they can zoom around the map and intercept any raiders. Now, if I don't have them available, or if I have 2 raids coming at me, say, for example, 1 for Damascus and 1 for Pella, I can't deal with both of these with my rapid reactionary force. One of these cities is going to be left to fend for themselves. I can call up the militia. They're not going to be as powerful. I might have to divvy up the rapid reactionary force and send, for example, the air squadron to support here and the heavy artillery to support here, depending on when the battles happen. If these guys get attacked early in the year and these guys later, I may have 2 or 3 months to recover and send my reactionary force over here. But in a case like 2948, where I only have 1 force attacking, I don't have to worry about that because these infantry that are casualties, and there are rules in Hellfire and the Fall of Empire. You get half of those back. So if I had to fight next month, I would have 9 bases in each of my companies. I think, what is that? Does each base amount to a squad? Then like 3 squads is a platoon, and then that's your company? Something like that. Yeah, it's probably 3 bases, and then your 1 base is the HQ. Here's where it gets a little bit more interesting. I had 1 tank that was damaged. One of those grav tanks got pounded by the enemy artillery. Their horse-drawn artillery zapped a grav tank. What does that mean? Well, that means, according to these rules, I have to pay half the cost of that tank in order to get it back. But these rules do not list costs for tanks. If they do, they're hidden somewhere. What we do have is a cost to summon your own tank. Okay, so that's what this is, cost of raising a company. So if I have a company of tanks, that costs me $500 a month to run them. That's $5,000 a year. And then when I call them up, though, it's $4,500. Okay, but wait a minute. How many tanks are there? Like, well, I know what the unit cost is. I know what it costs to raise the company. But if there's 3, 4, 5, if there's 5 tanks, then that means these tanks cost $900 apiece. There's 4 tanks. They cost 1,125 apiece. And I don't know what half of the cost of a tank is. And that's where I have to kind of fall back. And because I didn't declare that, I'm going to assume they're medium tanks. That's where I fall back to Hellfire campaigns, which is where old Jim actually tells you, okay, well, in this campaign, a heavy tank company costs 5,000 and a medium costs 4,500. Oh, so this is a medium Hellfire campaigns. That's a medium tank company, but that still doesn't tell me what does it cost to buy each of those tanks. That's listed up here. A medium tank with a crew served weapon is 1,000 credits. So it's going to cost me 500 credits to repair that tank. It's a long-winded way of saying, listen, for my medium tanks, it's just 500 credits, okay? And he does actually mention here, that means there's 4 medium tanks. Right, so I took, the one casualty, the one damaged tank. It's going to cost me 500. Now, what I wrote down here is the cost of my military for the year, at least my military adventures. 2,200 for the mercenaries. And I think I'm going to keep them around. But there's a little bit more to this. Well, actually, so what I assumed here is it's 600 a month to pay these guys to fight for me. I don't need to react to them. There's only one company. I say, hey, you know what? I could pay you 200 go away, but I want you to soak some of those casualties. And it's good that I did, because the fight would have been harder, and I would have had to soak all 8 of these casualties myself. So for the 3 months that these guys worked for me, I had to pay 1,800 credits. And I said, well, I'll give them 200. That's fine, 1,800. And I thought, hey, you know what? I'm going to pay him 2,200. And I'll show you why in a second. It keeps the math easy. But there's one other thing. When you beat up on an enemy, which we did, you can salvage half their equipment. Rules as written, Hellfire. Campaigns. Hellfire and the Fall of Empire. I should call this the Fall of Empire. It's all Hellfire, right? Hellfire campaigns, Hellfire, and Fall of Empire. Point being, you can salvage half of the surviving equipment. But you can really only salvage it at about a 3-to-1. Now, fortunately, see how I have this support company? Where is it? I had air support, heavy artillery, medium armor, flak energy. I thought I had a support company too. Yeah, support recovery battalion. I got 3 companies of those. I sent a company out there. So not only can I recover my medium tank, but I can start taking those damaged tanks that the Wheelians left behind. I can patch one of them up, and I'm going to give that to the Popular Front malcontents. This mercenary company now has a light tank. It's a wheeled vehicle. It's not very powerful. It's a little scout vehicle, but I'm going to give that to these guys along with a little bit of extra bonus. I'm going to give them 2,200 credits for the year. I'm going to do that for a very important reason. For 2 reasons, actually. One, I'm pretty lazy, and by giving them the 400 credit bonus, that brings my total cost for this adventure to 2,700 credits. And if we look back at my finances, and I know this is a little hard to read, but long story short, my military costs 130 plus 15.3 for the forces that I called up. That's the 1 tank company, the 3 artillery companies. So I got extra artillery I can send out. They were ready in time. The Wheelians waited too long. I had 4 months, 3 months to get them into battle. Now my infantry are bloodied, so they have a little bit more experience. I'm not going to class them as green anymore because they have a fight under their belts. By charging myself the 2,700, that takes my total cost up to 25. Well, I was at 2557, but oh yeah, look at that. I had to spend 2,700 this year. That means I am going to wrap up the year with 250. Well, that's actually down here. We'll look a little closer. So my reserve was 252.7. Oh, but 2,700 takes my finances down to a nice even 250. I made 200, so now I'm up to 450, but my army cost 110 or 140. So that means, I got to add 60 to that, and my reserve is going to be at, it's not going to be 250, is it? I think that's, let me double check here. My reserve to start the year was 211 plus the 44.7 excess. Yeah, so this is my reserve now. I actually came out ahead this year. I spent less than I made. So as I turn the page and I roll over into the year 2949, that's up here, I start with a reserve of 250 kilocredits, which is great because I'm going to be able to expand my military capabilities. But before I do, I need to find out how many barbarians are coming at me. I have 4 sets of barbarians. Well, this is just what I expected. I'm going to laugh if I roll double 5s here. Let's find out which 4 they are. I get a 1, 3, 5, and a 1, 3, 4, and 5. Our first encounter with the Maka. They want to take a swing at the king. They best not miss. We rolled the Wheelian Supremacy, as we said. We get a get out of jail free card because we beat the holy crap out of them. The Puka are coming back for round 2. Okay, well, I guess maybe the leader's son survived. We'll have to see how big of a threat they pose. And then, of course, the Tillian Republic is going to come at us as well. So we've got the Tillians, the Maka, and we've got the Puka. There is a 1 in 3 chance that a few more companies of the Imperial forces leave. A 6 means they're going to stick around. These guys are putting down roots. They don't want to leave. Does our capital city of Hippos shrink by 1? Do all of the Imperial folks decide they need to run back to Rome where the seat of power is? And the answer is yes. So Hippos will lose 1 population. I have to roll 3 times. Once for Gadara, Pella, and Philly. Same thing. The artistes are heading back home. So we have a 1 in 6. So Gadara does not, Pella does not, and Philly does. So Philly is going to be reduced in size, and that's going to affect our income. I wrote 200 here, but I'm going to be making I have 2 less population, which means my income is going to go down by, I think it's 20, but I'll have to double check. We still need to check to see if the Imperial orders are considered polite requests. They are not on a 1 or a 2. Do we end spare parts on a 1? Spare parts are yes. So we can no longer get spare parts. It's going to make it harder to repair our facilities. Does the governor die? There's a 1 in 10 chance that the man in charge, he does not. So we don't have to worry. Now the problem with the governor's death is there may be a battle for succession. We may have to fight a civil war while we're trying to ward off these dirty barbarians. To make matters worse, the end of spare parts means I have to roll a d6 for each of my manufacturing cities. Scythopolis, Kanatha, and Dion. And on a result of a 1, I lose 1 population there as well. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3. So no for Scythopolis, no for Kanatha, no for Dion. So this year I've only lost the 2, but I have to check that every year. And that means on average, every other year, these cities will shrink by 1. They can only shrink to half their size. But coming back to Hippos is down to 1. And here we have the maximum it will ever be is 12. You can recover, but there are trade-offs. When you recover population, you invite barbarians to come across the border and settle, and that changes the culture of your nation, and that could lead to some downsides of its own. It does limit your options in a lot of ways. Likewise with Philadelphia, and the other big thing is Philadelphia used to have 6 expeditionary companies, or 5 and 5. It had 6 home defense and 5 expeditionary company. Now it only has 5 home defense, because it got smaller. We're going full Detroit here. We are contracting. We don't have all of those. Remember, empires are expensive. You don't get into an empire because it makes you money. You get into empire because you're trying to make the world a better place. Salute to the British. It's expensive to run an empire. It's not a money-making proposition. The British ended the empire because they couldn't afford it anymore. And all those nut jobs that say, oh yeah, you just stole the wealth. Yet, no, totally didn't. It was a net loss. Anyway, the big, at least financially, right? There was a huge gain morally and religiously as, we spread the good word around the world. That's the real world. Let's talk about this one. And I guess that's probably what these are for. Like, culture includes not just movies, but things that really matter, the stories we tell each other, and a lot of that. The best ones, of course, touch upon who we are at our core, deep in our soul, which of necessity is a religious moment. So one of these, maybe Rafana. No, Garasa is the big one. This might be like the religious center of the... In fact, let's do that. I'm going to put a little cross right here. We must protect Garasa. We may wind up moving our capital to Garasa too, because that's where the big cathedral is. It turns out when the Navy leaves that flight of the Imperial functionaries, I'm supposed to be rolling for the creative cities as well. I didn't notice that. There is no real concise checklist, so I'm discovering things every year. So I'm going to roll twice for Garasa, twice for Rafana, and twice for Damascus. And for every 1 that I roll, In fact, I rolled 2d6. For every one that I roll, I'm going to lose 1 point of population. So nothing for Garasa. How about Damascus? They lose 1, and Rafana loses 1. So I'm going to lose 2 more here in this year of 2949. Now I'm just going to arbitrarily, I didn't lose them last time. I got them this time. Maybe it's a little bit of a cheat, but it's fine. We're going to move on. I might have picked up like a couple of extra thousand credits. It's not going to break the game. And here you can see our running totals. I will leave the maximum here. There are triggers that happen. The most you can lose from any one of these 4 types is 7. Once I lose 7 points of art, the fashions change. We develop our own style, and we don't lose any more population from the art sector. Likewise with the factory and finance. The capital, Hippos, can fall to 6, and then it will stop right there. So I have to adjust these expeditionary forces and militia forces. I'll get to that later. The important thing to be aware of is with a 96 population, some of these have filtered off into our neighbors. Some of them have gone back to the imperial capital. Maybe some of these guys joined the Popular Front when the NGO shut down. That's a thing that happens. So our monthly income drops to 19,200. And remember, our financial year is 10 months. We are like the Super French. We take 2 months off, December and January, and that means that our annual income is now only going to be 192,000 credits. We are 8,000 credits poorer this year than we were last. And I think now you see why it was so important to max out our reserve while we could. This number is now most likely going to start dropping precipitously, particularly given that we need to deal with 3 unknown threats. We'll get to that. So with an income of 192 and an army cost of 140, we will be able to add another 52 kilocredits, providing everything goes well. That's a pretty hefty chunk of money. I don't think it's going to happen, though. So the next thing we do, based on the examples in the back of the book, is figure out what the Maka, Puka, and Tilian boys are up to. Depending on how this goes and when it goes, we may want to spend a big chunk of this calling up our militias, training them up for a few months, getting them into position to resist these 3 threats. Hopefully we can hire some more mercenaries, which ain't going to be cheap. If we hire Puka mercenaries, I think we may just give them that 1 light tank. And we'll kind of keep a running tally of those guys as we go. We will start with the Maka, another large people. They're of interest to anthropologists because what government they have keeps no records. Government is by custom rather than law. It's believed that over the centuries, custom has slowly changed. Blah, blah, blah. Volunteers should be accepted, equal conscripted. It's been commented that the Makan are a culture built around tax avoidance. My brothers, as methodically collecting tax or even conducting a census is impossible. Maybe these guys aren't so bad after all. From a game perspective, the Maka are most likely to be bought off or serve as paid allies. Oh, I do like these guys. So we roll a d6 to find out what their government policy is for the year. And with a 1, they're going to be raiding us. Okay, so we got a Maka raid. And then for the Puka, they are going to raid us this time. We might regret giving them that light tank. And for the Tilian Republic, we roll. They're probably going to take a city. But on a 5 or a 6, they're not. They're going to try to take a city. Okay, so take city. And what does each of these mean? Well, it depends on who they are. But the first thing to be aware of is there's a very good chance, about 1 in 6, that these aren't actually going to happen because our Departmentum Assassinorum is very active. We'll start with the Makan. Roll a d6 each year. On a 1, new head of state. Kapow! The Makan raid canceled due to the leader suffering from a bad case of concrete poisoning. The Puka have the same issue. Looking for a 1. We didn't get it. They are going to be coming at us. This is a raid. That means a normal-sized force will have D6 infantry with 1 mounted unit each for every 3 units. So they're going to bring 4 companies of infantry and 1 company of mounted. And I should point out, each of these infantry will have D6 plus 4 bases that count as having obsolete projectile weapons. They fire at half effect. What does that mean? Well, on average, if we figure that your average result on a D6 is 3.5, they're going to have 7.5 bases to my company's 10. The 4 companies are going to be at 3/4 strength. That's important to remember. We have the overwhelming weight of numbers, even if the number of companies is the same. They're mounted, have personal projectile weapons and a riding animal. These obsolete projectile weapons give us a huge leg up over these barbarians. I suppose we could roll to see how big each of those are, but I'm just going to take the average because there's 4 of them. So in effect, that's one more variable we're going to have to put into our battle computer when it comes to resolving. And I probably should have done that for the Tillians as well. The Tillians are located to the southwest. They are going to come roaring up this unnamed river. I think we might have given it a name, but he didn't write it down, so I might as well not have. They're going to try to take Damascus, which is, of course, the gateway to Decopolis. If we take a look at the Tillian Republic and their general policy, what we find is a republic based on a core of hill towns, prosperous and growing. They export raw materials into the Decopolis or the Bacatan Empire. Right? So the weaponry produced is sold across the barbarian world. Their vehicles are reliable rather than fashionable. They produce wheeled APC. Right? So that's good. That's good to know. They do produce a tank. So they're just normal now, right? Major push happens when they try to take multiple cities. They're just trying to take the one. So what we're looking at today is that we're going to have D6 plus 2 infantry with 1, and that's, yeah, so we'll roll for that. And I got, look at that, I got a 1. So again, probing force. The Tillians are going to try to take a city with 3 infantry and then 1 arty, 1 artillery, and 1 tank company. They are politically moderate. Roll a D10. I probably should have rolled a D10 first, huh? D10 to find out if we get a new head of state. We do not. So they really are coming at us. I think they're the greater threat. The other thing we need to be aware of is that when these guys come. So for the Tillians, they're going to show up in the 2nd month. That means, so remember, we don't worry about the 1st month, January. February, March, still springtime, still muddy. April, May. So they're coming in May. The Tillians come in May, and the Puka raid is going to come in 3 months later. So May, June, July, August. So they're going to raid in August, and we still haven't completed preparations for the year because we have to come back around to here and find out, well, hold on, taking a city. So for the rating, a rating force will allow itself to be bought off if it rolls a 1 or a 2 on a D6. I might want to buy off one of these guys. The Puka have 5 companies, and so do the Tillians. A rating force will allow itself to be hired as paid allies if it rolls a 1. So I can actually hire. Let's find out. We'll offer the Puka. I'd rather have the Puka fight against the Tillians. You guys take the casualties. So we roll a D6. And on a 4, they're not interested. Well, maybe the Tillians would like to go to war against the Puka. I can retain my forces until next year. So I'll roll again. And no, neither one of these guys. So I am now going to have to worry about 2 different battles in 2 different areas. The good news is I've got a 3-month gap between them. May, let's see, June, July, August. I got 3 months to recover. So I should be okay on that score. I think the one thing I forgot to talk about is the Tillians, though. And when I say talk about, I mean, I forgot to research it. It says here that a unit will have 8 bases of infantry with personal projectile weapons and flak armor. 9th base has crew-served projectile, and 2 man-portable unguided missiles. Oh, they travel in unarmed APCs, so these guys are fast. It's going to be hard to react to those guys. The artillery has a vehicle-mounted artillery piece on a tracked self-propelled chassis. Light armor, accompanied by a vehicle carrying ammo. And then the armor has 3 heavy tanks. Ooh. So my medium tanks are going to have to go up against a heavy tank, and I'm going to call the episode here. This is far enough. I'm going to sort these out, and when we get back together next time, I need to figure out how I'm going to defend against these guys. This is 3 heavy tanks and 1 self-propelled, and then I've got 3 infantry companies with 8 bases. So again, I have the numerical superiority because I've got 10 bases. So in both cases, if I send my rapid reactionary force, I'll have the advantage, and I think I might have to. Because the Puka raid, that's the other question. The Puka here are going to be coming after Kanatha. They'll filter through these passes. I think Kanatha's on their own. I think Kanatha's, we're going to have to pay to train up the militia and the expeditionary company so that we're going to have 7 companies of militia fighting against 4 companies and 1 company of 4 companies. So at the end, it may be 80 bases for us against, 30 bases for them, but they have the cavalry in support. We're going to have to try to protect Damascus, because that's where the Tillians are going. And the Puka are going for Kanatha. The Puka are raiding, and I guess the key here, one of the things that I still haven't quite figured out, and like I said, I'm going to wrap it up here pretty quick, is that when a force moves to the nearest city, roll a d10 and the city will surrender on a roll of 1. But, wait a minute. And so we might lose some value here, but I think that's the whole point of I need to stop the Tillians. I need to defend Damascus with my reactionary force. Unless I'm going to split it up. But I'm not sure. I got to sit back. I got to think. The other thing I can do, I got a huge war chest here. I can recruit another rapid reactionary force. I can recruit another mechanized infantry that will be able to get to Kanatha in a day or 2. And so we can roll to see if Kanatha surrenders and if we lose some income from this city. But we'll talk about that next time. So tune in when we continue 2949. If the Empire's still alive. Song lyrics, that's like the last refuge of the uncreative. I gotta stop doing that. Hey, till next time, I'm praying for you.